So in Los Angeles, in Southern California, we don't build new houses. We just burn down the ones we have, which makes insuring the ones that are left more challenging. As a real estate agent, we've been challenged with getting buyers able to get insurance, and the costs have gone up tremendously. And so I was really lucky when I came across a company that specializes in insurance for wildfire exposed properties and had a chance to talk to Michael in depth. I wanted to share that with everybody on my channel. Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And you're with Rhino.com is the name of the company. So talk a little bit about what was the thinking of launching something that focused in an area that seems to me to be one of the Achilles heels here in Southern California.
Yeah, I mean, so I am from Southern California. I now live in Northern California, but I think the common theme across the state is that insurance is now a common dinner party conversation, which was definitely not true probably 5 or 10 years ago. And I think your intro is entirely right that the losses we've seen from wildfire have these tremendous downstream effects on insurance availability and also affordability. And so the motivation for us in starting Rhino was, well, with all these people being non-renewed or priced out or seeing big increases, what can we do as a property specific brokerage to help people find the best coverage, regardless of where they are in the state?
And so part of that is just getting a good insurance quote for that property. But I know another part of it is um, helping the buyer or owner of the property position the property to be more safe, which reduces the
Mhm.
risk, and that's going to affect reducing the cost of the insurance. So, talk a little bit about mitigation strategies that homeowners might consider both before applying for insurance or if they're declined in order to get insurance. What are some of the mitigation things they should be looking into?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I think it is important to show carriers the best side of your home, so to speak. Not a physical side, but all the ways in which it's resilient and safer from wildfires. The hard part in this challenge is every carrier has slightly different things they want to see. And that's just the nature of how they do underwriting. And it's actually part of what makes us valuable as an independent brokerage is that we can search multiple carriers and find yeses by searching quite efficiently. But there are two, I would say, um, decent frameworks for what to do around your home to make it more wildfire resilient. One comes from the state. It's called Safer from Wildfires. The other is from an organization called IBHS, which is an insurance organization, a nonprofit that researches what folks should do. And both of them follow, I think, similar categories of actions. One is called home hardening. The other is called defensible space. And home hardening is about improving structurally how does your home respond to embers and fire. Defensible space is how do you minimize the chance that the fire gets there by, you know, creating gaps where vegetation cannot become fuel that really leads all the way up to your house. And so both of those checklists are mostly similar. Actually, there are only a few slight differences, but they call out, the vulnerable places both on the structure and around the property, such as having a Class A roof, having enclosed eaves because that's a place embers can build up, having non-combustible siding at least from the ground up, and another one that's gotten a lot of attention post LA, having ember-resistant vents because the airflow can often drive embers into the home. So those two checklists are things that we actually like to help all of our insureds with, because between the policy bind and the next year's renewal, there's a lot of time in between to invest on your own schedule and in your own budget into some of those things.
So, somebody buying a house in one of these areas, let's say, Palisades or Brentwood or Altadena, obviously
Hmm.
they can't do much while buying the house. The seller either did or didn't prepare before, and they're ensuring what's there. There's kind of limited things you can make a seller do or the sellers are willing to do. It depends. There's some sellers that
Hmm.
are totally creative and innovative and want to do it, but most my experience is they've done what they've done. They're ready to move on. But really, then that insurance might just be a worst case for a year. Are you able to give a prospective buyer, this is what it would be this year, and if you can do these things, here's what we could do perhaps at renewal, assuming rates stay the same a year from now?
Yeah, it's a good question. We can't ever necessarily guarantee how the underwriting will be done a year out. At the same time, we can give a lot of guidance on what the major inputs into underwriting are. So, for example, you're right. Most sellers have kind of done what they're willing to do, and in very high fire risk areas, there are some disclosures that are required around like what has and hasn't been done. And so, one example that we've seen some buyers negotiate is look, if the roof is decades old, right, and is going to be virtually out of compliance with most carriers, that could be a cost that's negotiated against in the price with the seller, right?
Right.
The expectation being, look, if this house is to be insurable at all, it will need a new roof in the next 2 or 3 years. So why don't I get out ahead of that and be the one to do the work, but be able to negotiate the payment to, prepare myself for that expense.
So, but obviously, so back to buyer, we want to get an idea of what the difference is. You're able to provide, I imagine, policy A and policy B. Policy A is with roof that's out of compliance. Policy B is if the roof was in compliance. If the seller did change it, here's what they could get. Same kind of thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. And so that's one area where we think we set ourselves apart, right? Which is if we can find you something, but the exception is in the roof, we'll let you know so that you can plan around how to upgrade your roof over the
Right,
next year.
right.
And if that is something that does unlock different types of coverage, for example, we want to proactively flag that.
The other thing is, my experience as a real estate agent is the cost of removing brush is way more than you would imagine. I think it's gone up, like everything post COVID. It's gone up because cost of labor has gone up so much, like everything. It's gone up because you can't just go to
Mhm.
Home Depot and grab two guys anymore. Those guys aren't there, or afraid you're going to arrest them if you go there. I think in many cases, and maybe this is how it should be, but the cost of moving brush back 10, 15, 20 feet can be very expensive. Have you seen transactions where people get quotes in a flatbed? I've seen those. I mean, things that we thought might have been $2,000 or $3,000 a few years ago are like $15,000 problems today.
It really depends on just the size of the lot, quite honestly. Like I think, but even sometimes where the lot is more condensed, the bigger insurance stressor is limbing really tall or old trees, where there's some sort of interaction between maybe that vegetation and a roof or another vulnerable part of the home. And so depending on the tree, like that can run in the thousands of dollars, like just for a single tree, as opposed to like clearing out, maybe an acre's worth of defensible space. But yeah, totally agree that on all fronts the costs are going up, and so it makes actually planning out those expenses and figuring out like what is the most urgent thing to take care of a lot more important.
The other thing I think sellers are surprised that there's in the city of Atlanta a requirement to determine how many, I forget the term they use, I want to say rare trees, but protected species of trees are on the property. Even on a regular house, just on a standard 5,000 square foot
Mm,
lot house, that's the disclosure now. And many sellers need to hire, a professional to make that assessment. But if that protected species is overhanging the house, you have a whole nother series of problems, right? Because you really can't remove the
yes.
tree if you're the buyer and it's disclosed. But the seller can often remove the tree while they're in escrow. And so these are things where it would seem
Mm,
to me that people looking to sell the house should be also looking at remediation efforts if they're thinking of selling it. And I found a case where a seller, without asking what kind of tree it was, just get rid of it because it's overhanging your house. Maybe it is protected. That's not your concern today.
mhm.
But if you sell the house, it becomes the buyer can't tear it down, and it's overhanging the house. You probably can't sell your house, or it's going to be very expensive. So the interplay of the government regulations and can really become a deadly combination.
And it's interesting because they're sometimes in conflict with each other, right? So one of the rules coming down from the state for very high hazard areas is to create a non-combustible zone, a zone zero around the first 5 feet, like adjacent to the house. And that is something that could clearly come into conflict with some sort of protected species. And there are a lot of folks who are upset about this because they value the vegetation around their home. Um, and so what you raised is a sort of like, you know, stellar timing of being able to do some of those defensible space actions is actually a really interesting one that I hadn't even considered until you brought it up.
Yeah, I mean, I had a seller. We're looking at property. Is it a walnut tree or not? And I said, I don't want to know. I don't know. Like
Yeah,
every
yeah, you
other.
don't want to know
I
sometimes.
don't want
Yeah.
to know. And there's no prohibition in this case from the seller in this particular case where he was to remove the tree because it wasn't in an area that they're protected. But the buyer would have a problem because the tree's overhanging the house, and so it's one of those things where you can pay some guy $500 to move it now, or you can pay some guy $1,000 to move it later. Which one do you want to do? So these are all things that get involved. So talk about the business side of with Rhino.
hmm
Is your business primarily business to consumer, where you're getting consumers coming to you? Are you working? I mean, obviously, I'm a real estate agent. I appreciate promoting you to our real estate
hmm
community. Do you work primarily with real estate agents or other professionals? What's the focus from the
Yeah.
business development?
So we're a brokerage that does both actually, because by specializing in wildfire, it really means that people come to you at 2 points in their, I guess, journey. One is if they're already non-renewed, right? Let's say their carrier has decided they are no longer writing in a particular zip code or a particular type of risk. We want to be the first call for those folks. Or if the renewal is 100% higher, it's a doubling of what they were paying last year. We want to be the first call so we can help folks find better options. But if fingers crossed, people are not getting non-renewed every single year, right? So that's a minority of folks. But the other time you really need insurance is you're buying a home, right? Like you need to secure that mortgage. And now that so much insurance capacity has left the state, it's a lot harder to do that search. So oftentimes people need to do some pre-planning before they put in an offer, as opposed to putting in the offer and then going out to see what's out there. Especially if the price isn't certain, it's really hard to budget for that. So we do work with real estate agents who are trying to give buyers a sort of preliminary indication of just what to budget for, right? Can you get regular insurance from an admitted carrier? Can you get a non-admitted carrier, or do you have to be on the fair plan? Just being able to prepare folks in the real estate world for that conversation is a big part of what we do as well.
It didn't used to be. I mean, we used to. I sold real estate for years. We never really talked about it. The customer had Allstate for their car and decided, the first time buyer, they tried them for their home insurance and they're happy with them, and
Yeah.
it worked out. The prices were all about the same. It was pretty insignificant. That's not the case anymore. It's a whole different world depending on where you're buying. I'm sure, again, condos or small houses in inner city areas are different, but there are a lot of houses that have trees, parks, neighbors, back alleyways. There's all kinds of different threats and issues that go on today, and it's definitely worth the extra time to do that. So is this
And
something that you deal with
mhm.
individually? Do you have a team of people who talk to prospective consumers? I know you had the website. How do people go from, I'm curious, I have a question, I'm concerned, I got cut off, to interacting with your company?
Yeah, so we're a pretty lean team. We have some engineers who are focused on digitizing and optimizing our process. Part of what makes it work is that we gather data about your home from real estate sources, analyze that, and prepare it for submission much faster than conventional, pen and paper brokerages. Um, but I would say, person you would work with would be me. And so, our goal is certainly to grow because that demand is out there, and do a lot of the back office things efficiently, but to still maintain the level of service that people like want out of a broker. Um, that is one thing that we find really exciting about starting a business sort of in 2025 with a lot of like AI tools at our disposal, is that a lot of the data enrichment and validation and entry, where you would traditionally have to spend a lot on, just like manpower, um, can sort of be optimized and automated away. And so it actually leaves more time for someone like me to walk someone through the coverages and the carriers and the mitigation actions that are relevant to them.
One of the things I always find interesting about more online or technology forward companies is they
Mhm.
often have great resources to supplement or replace the interaction of, in many cases, poorly trained competitors. And so rather than get bad information, you go online and get information. Your website, I think, has some really interesting things about how to protect, and you kind of have some interesting graphs. One of the numbers that jumped off the page to me was here it is, this stat. Home destroyed by embers versus flame or heat. 9% of the homes that were destroyed, it was embers that started. I imagine it means embers got into the roof or into the eaves or into the vent systems, and then from there the fire started, as opposed to the flames pushing up the street, catching the house fire. Talk a little bit about what that means and what the implications are to a homeowner.
Yeah, it's part of what we saw in the LA fires. My family was actually very close to the Eden fires, and one thing that I think maybe like didn't really become clear to me until after the fire was just how widespread geographically the damage was. And so the purpose of that statistic is to show actually the thing that catches a home on fire is not often direct flame. It can be embers that, particularly in windy conditions that make wildfire more common, um, can leap across freeways or miles away from where the fire actually is, and then lodge somewhere vulnerable in a home. And so when we think about mitigation, some of the best advice that I got from a career inspector was like, think as if you were a fire or an ember, right? If you floated to a house, where would you lodge, and where would you burn and smolder until you become actually like a fire that consumes the structure? And so that's sort of the logic behind what's on that checklist. Like the reason siding is important is because embers can accumulate and build from the ground up, right? And then the pile gets taller and taller and taller, and then eventually comes into contact with the combustible part of the siding or the home. Same thing for windows, same thing for vents. And so that's why the sort of ember versus flame distinction is important. Even if you're not necessarily close to like a forest, those embers can really go anywhere.
Right. You don't have to be the house that's on the fire side of the canyon. You could be a block and a half away because the wind pushes embers a block and a half away.
Mhm.
You're going to get embers at some point, and it can be one or two. It could be a lot. It'll build up. I used to live in Diamond Bar up against a canyon, so I'm personally
Mhm.
familiar with. Even though the fire was nowhere near us, we had to really pay attention, and you wanted to try to catch those embers and put them out right away, at least at your own house, to try to protect yourself. So, well, Michael, look, a lot of great information at withrhino.com, and obviously you're a very sharp guy about this stuff. I encourage people to reach out. Best way to reach you, I know your email is michael at withrhino.com. Is that the best way to get a conversation started?
Yeah, get in touch, and I think we're happy to chat through these things, even if you are not necessarily up for renewal or if you're in the middle of your policy. Like the thing about mitigation is that it's a planning effort as much as anything. And my slightly more maybe like less optimistic take is like the insurance market will continue to be quite hard in the coming years.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so this availability and affordability problem is worth getting out ahead of, especially if you know you live somewhere that's a little bit prone to wildfire.
Yeah, I don't think there's any case that says that the insurance industry has a renaissance next year when it goes back to where things were in the 80s and 90s. I think the opposite is more likely, that the
Yeah.
squeeze will continue and over time. And so consumers, if you own a house now, get in front of it. If you're looking to buy a house, try to get in front of some of those major issues. And
Yeah.
with rhino.com is a great resource to do that. So Michael, again, I just want to thank you. There's a website if you want to go to, and his email if you want to contact him specifically. But Michael, we appreciate your time laying these issues out for us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bill. Great to be here.
And for actually, this is Bill Gross. I talk about real estate issues regularly. You can reach out to me directly at Bill Gross Probate on social media. And if I can help in any way, reach out. As always, make today your best day ever. Thanks so much.